Okay, we are live.
Okay.
I'm going to put the our screen on. Sorry about that.
Looks like Bruce Bellows is performing live with Pink Floyd on stage. So, Elaine, shall we begin?
It's actually old Genesis, Peter Gabriel Genesis.
Excellent. Songs that go on for 15 minutes.
Some of them 20.
20. So we're going to call this meeting to order for April 28th Committee of Adjustment for the City of St. Catharines. Also, in recognition of the traditional territories, we begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous people. So to all of you who have joined us this evening through the various forms of communication technology, thank you and welcome to this hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of St. Catharines. Everyone present, as in who signed on to be part of the this process this evening, will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard this evening. There are two major types of applications to this committee. One is an application for consent and severance, chopping up land. Two is an application for minor variances to minor bylaw requirements. And we have examples of both those types this evening. Evidence may be required to be given under oath if deemed necessary. Please address your comments and questions through the chair, and this evening that is me. Copies of the decision will be mailed to the applicant and to any other person who appeared before the committee or filed a written request to receive a notice of decision. In the matter of consent applications, any person, corporation, or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of the consent to the local planning appeals tribunal within 20 days of the mailing of the decision. Minor variance decisions may also be appealed. However, they must be made within 20 days of the making of the decision, and the cost of an appeal is $400. So the emphasis on that last bit is this is not a binding, well, the decision we're making is based on sound and reasoning. However, if the decision is not what either the applicant or the public participating want, and there's reason to want to contest it again, the process I just described is how that can happen. So, Elaine, are there any amendments or additions to the agenda?
There have been a few additions to the agenda. There was a request to withdraw for 447 Geneva Street. And we had a couple of extra people submit comments, but that is it.
Okay, so we will address those shortly. Or I guess we address them now. So with respect to item...
We should, sorry, Greg, we should do the motion to approve the agenda first to follow that, our new process.
Yeah, sure, thank you. So there are some amendments that we'll talk about shortly. May we have a motion to approve the agenda? Carrie Lee, thank you so much. And a motion to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting. Adam, thank you. And does any member of this panel have a conflict of interest in any of the applications to be considered at this hearing or the previous hearing if they were not in attendance? Actually, we don't have video for every, I can't see, is Robin with us?
Rob, Robin
No.
is off today. She's gave her regrets.
Okay, so Adam, David, Carrie, and I are indicating we do not have any conflict of interest. And then requests for withdrawal or adjournment is,
I have a few. I don't know if you want to, we'll do them one at a time and then I'll come back after each motion, if that's okay.
yes.
The first one was a consent to minor variance applications for 102 Broadway. They had extended their deferral to the January meeting and extended to April, this hearing tonight, but they have now considered, they've withdrawn their application, and we need a motion from the committee to request approval and accept the withdrawal, and that the application be considered refused without prejudice to any future applications that may be heard.
Okay, it sounds like they're having some trouble with that one, given the previous deferrals. So does a member of the committee wish to make the motion to withdraw this application? David Ringler? Currently muted. Okay, good.
I move the consent application B0719SC and variance application A1919 for 102 Broadway and variance application A2019 for 2 Lakeside Drive be withdrawn as directed in writing by the agent, resulting in a technical refusal without prejudice to any future applications that may be filed.
All those in favor of the motion? Okay, so that motion's been passed unanimously.
The next application is a request to extend a deferral to the May 26th hearing for 36 The Cedars. It's a minor variance A-0321. The owner, Shelley Tenbrook, is present, as well as her agent, Craig Rowe from Upper Canada. Should the committee have any questions?
Okay, well, I'd just like to briefly have one of either the owner or the agent give us a quick idea as to why the deferral is being requested.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Craig Rowe from Upper Canada Consultants on behalf of our client. We had a great conversation with city staff about the applications on April 16th with the committee secretary treasurer, as well as there have been some correspondence back and forth with the building department. Having had those conversations, unfortunately, it wasn't done in enough time to have everything prepared and ready for this meeting, but we will be ready to go in May. So we're just asking for an extension to come back to you in a month.
Great, good conversations, productive conversations, what we like to hear. Any member of the committee have any questions regarding that explanation? If not, we'll accept a motion for the deferral to May. Adam?
I will make the motion to defer to the May meeting.
Excellent. All those in favor of the motion to defer to the May meeting? All right, that motion has been carried unanimously. We'll see you on May 26.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Take care.
Bye-bye.
The third item is regarding 121 Moffett. It's for a consent, two consents, B08 and B09 21SC. Staff have requested that the subject applications be deferred until either the May 26th or June 23rd hearing. And this is supported by the owner, who's Anthony is present. The request is to allow the owner to update their plan to include the required road widening and any other requirements from that.
Okay, so this was actually part of our agenda this evening. So we'll be, with this review, will be potentially one less item. So would Anthony Continelli, I mean, did you, anything to add as to the description as to why we're asking for the deferral?
Taya is the planner. She may be able to.
Well, I mean, you've explained it well enough. You've explained it well enough for me. I don't need anything else. Does the committee require any further explanation? Seeing none from all. Sorry, Ted, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we'll talk to you later. So someone make a motion, please, to defer the application until, I guess we can call it the June meeting, and then are they able to come in beforehand? Okay, so we'll
That's right.
push it out as far as we need to. So Adam?
I'll make a motion to move as requested to the June meeting.
Okay, all those in favor of the deferral? Okay, that's been passed unanimously.
And lastly, we have, it was item number 2 on the agenda for tonight for 447 Geneva Street, a minor variance, A2521. A written request was received from the owners to withdraw the application. The owners see that the community is not behind the proposal and decided to listen to their feedback. We request that the motion is required by the committee to approve and accept the withdrawal, and the application be considered refused without prejudice to any future applications that may be filed.
Okay. So this is for Geneva Street. This was okay. So any further clarification required from the owner and or applicant? No?
The owner and the owners are not present.
Right.
Yeah.
And thankfully they all heard that. So that's why they said no, there's no more further questions. So a member of the committee, please make a motion. David, thank you.
I move that variance application A2521 for 447 Geneva be withdrawn, resulting in a technical refusal without prejudice to any future applications that may be filed.
All in favor for the withdrawal? Okay, Adam, yep. Okay, so that's been unanimously withdrawn from the process. So before we get started, anyone who would have come to register to speak to this particular application, thank you for your enthusiasm. However, your attendance and participation isn't required since the particular application is withdrawn. So either sit back and enjoy the rest of the show or go and rake the lawn, because that is no longer an issue for this agenda. So following along, so before we start our remainder of our agenda, I just wanted to let everyone know that Elaine Monroe and Will Banda are people that they're familiar with. We have a variety with the application process for the Committee of Adjustment. We have a variety of planners who will be participating throughout the evening on their respective applications. So we have Evan Notch, Bruce Bellows, Taya Devlin, Charlotte McEwen, and Scott Ritchie. The people who are serving on the committee are just like everybody out there, citizens of St. Catharines, volunteering to take a look at the applications that are being made. We receive communication from city staff, very knowledgeable, and other departments, and their recommendation. And this evening, in a public forum, we get to take a look at that information as well as any public input for our final decision. So that's Adam Selvig, David Ringler as vice chair, Carrie Leask, Robin McPherson, who's not here, and me, Greg Redden, who is the chair. And that should clear the way for us to start looking at application number 1 on our agenda for 4547 Canterbury Drive.
Hi, good evening. Elaine,
Hello.
should I start?
Please do.
Okay, thank you. I'm Zara Ziai. I'm acting for the owners of the properties at 4547 Canterbury Drive and 125 Hartsel Road with respect to applications B11/21 SC and B12/21 SC. These are applications to reestablish formerly existing parcels, 3 formerly existing parcels that merged when the same owner took title to all 3 parcels. An application very similar to the one that we have brought today was made back in 2015 for the 3 parcels to be reestablished. Consents were granted with respect to that application, and a new reference plan was registered at the Land Registry Office in October of 2015. Unfortunately, the consents themselves were not registered, and the timeline for their registration has passed, and so we are left bringing the applications again. The applications are proposing the establishment of 2 parcels for 45 and 47 Canterbury Drive. These would be the proposed severed parcels, which will be standalone parcels. And the remaining parcel would be for 125 Hartsel Road, and that would be the remnant parcel. The severed parcels would maintain the exact same boundaries as the formerly existing parcels. And the proposed severed parcels contain 2 residential dwellings, each of them a semi-detached single-family dwelling, which we believe is appropriate for that parcel and is compliant with the zoning provisions applicable to those parcels. The proposed remnant parcel would contain a mixed-use structure, a former car dealership, and that too is appropriate for the mixed-use zoning that is allowed for that parcel. There is no redevelopment whatsoever that is being proposed. Nothing is going to change on the ground, so there will be no impacts on the surrounding or on the environment that would be adverse in any way. And finally, there are no variances that are being requested, no variance to zoning bylaws. On the basis of all this, the applicant is requesting that the consents for severance be granted by the committee. And he's had an opportunity to review the conditions that have been recommended by the city in its technical report. And the condition with respect to the relocation of the shed has actually already been completed. So the work required to satisfy that condition has been completed, and it's a matter of the city inspector attending at the site and confirming that the condition has been satisfied. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them, but I think this is a very straightforward application for reestablishment of pre-existing parcels. Thank you.
I think it's very well described. Thank you. So the committee would have reviewed the application and the reports. We see that the city's recommendations for the 2 severances, there are 3 conditions for those. And does any member of the committee have any further questions for the applicant or the planner who might be able to shed some light on the city's perspective? No, I don't. I think it's pretty straightforward and clear. There is, well, whoever makes the motion, there's some guidance from as to how that might proceed. So anybody wish to make a motion then? There's only 3 of you. Okay, Carrie Lees.
Sorry, I'm not clear on your guidance comment.
Well, I see that there's a note about the acknowledgement and direction for the conveyance of the subject parcel together with a copy of the deposited referral plan for use in issuance of the certificate of consent. That was something that we were to add to our motion.
Yeah.
It appears.
Yes.
Okay.
Following consideration of all written and oral presentation, I move that consent numbers B1121 and B1221 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved, subject to the 4 conditions. I guess each one of them has 4 now. 3 of which are within the technical report, 1 of which is being added. As they are desirable and compatible with the surrounding area, have no adverse impacts on the surrounding properties, have regard for section 5124 of the Planning Act, conform with the policies of the city's official plan and zoning bylaw, maintain the intent and purpose of the provincial policy statement, and do not conflict with any applicable provincial plans.
Thank you. That covers it all for these two consent applications. Any further questions from the committee? Nope. All those in favor of the motion? All right. So to the applicant, your application has been unanimously approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
All right, item number 3 on the agenda is for 150 Glendale Avenue. This seems to be something that people want to engage in, so we've received a number of written correspondence submitted. And we have a number of registered speakers, which we will get to in an orderly fashion. So the intent of this hearing, again, is to understand the scope of what the applicant is asking for by way of modifications to the zoning bylaw. And they've all been clearly laid out in their application, items 1 through 8 with respect to their variances. And we will be reviewing them with respect to the Provincial Planning Act in determining whether these variances are suitable and appropriate for the development and in compliance with the zoning bylaw official plan. So right now, it looks like we have a former church property that is being developed into a private road development off of Glendale. And the city has provided us with a variety of reports. Their ultimate recommendation to us is that it be approved. So if the applicant or agent has anything they wish to add beyond what we already know, we would be happy to hear it.
Perfect. And good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mike Pettigrew, and I'm a senior planner with the Bigley Area Group, and we represent Ambria Homes, who are the owners and the applicants and the future builders of this site. So we have reviewed the staff report, and we've read the comments from the public. We also attended an open house for the site plan. I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago now. And we sort of made presentation there and spoke with many of the residents, I believe, that have put in the similar comments here. We are in support of the recommendation in the staff report. We agree that it meets the 4 tests. And I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have, but I think you've got a lot of delegates. And so if you want, you can reserve those to the end, or whatever pleases the committee.
Okay, thank you. I have a question that is not meant to put you on the spot, but anything that may have been discussed in the open house with the residents, has that anything been incorporated? Any changes to this application we see before us that would have been discussed at the open house?
No, there has not been any changes here. This application represents the same site plan.
Okay.
We're still going through the site plan application.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any member of the committee have any questions for the applicant? David Ringler.
I was curious with regard to the parking spaces obstructed on 2 sides, why it was felt that there was a need to move from the 3.5 meter bylaw to 3.0 meters.
Okay.
So to you through the chair, I believe that, obviously Taya's report goes through that in detail as well. But just by way of the design, the obstructions on 2 sides really apply. It does apply to any of the driveway spaces, but mainly applies to the garages. At 3 meters, that is still acceptable when you view the size of a car in comparison. We've got a 10-foot clearance for inside of a garage. You still have sufficient clearance around the car at 3 meters, at 10 feet. And what the main goal in limiting the garage width was to limit the width of the driveway space in front of it. So the bylaw requires that 50% of the property frontage for a townhouse be driveway, 50% for the unit. So without having to make these units significantly wider to accommodate the additional width for a driveway space, that's why the decision when we spoke with staff that 3 meters would be appropriate for the garage. And then on the driveway space, there is technical obstructions because of the overhang for the balconies, but they are much closer to the buildings themselves, so they won't actually obstruct the doors, and there'll be sufficient space on the driveways to get around the vehicles inside. So we thought that it was appropriate that way from an urban design perspective as well, and that it'll still provide sufficient space for a car.
Okay, thank you for the question and explanation. So obviously the functionality of opening car doors in a 3-foot space is really an internal to the building problem and nothing that impacts the exterior public realm, if you will, although it's a private road development. So thank you for that clarification. Any committee member have any other questions, comments, clarification? No? Okay. Neither do I. So I know that the intent of listening to the speakers is that you will all be building on what the previous speaker before you has said. So if the points made by the first speaker have been made and they were included in what you're going to contribute, we would ask that you not repeat that, because we will have already been introduced to that, and that you add your new points and comments and questions and build on it that way, so that we can be efficient in this process. So I've got a list of the individuals who have registered to speak, and the first on the list are Jim and Suzanne, or Jim, Vicky, and Suzanne. So presumably one of you is speaking on behalf of all of you, and I'd like to invite you to address us.
Hi, it's Jim, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicants of my place on Jasmine Crescent.
Okay, Jim, hello, and please let us hear what you have to say.
There really were two issues that I was raising. One was the scope of the project itself, the increased vehicle traffic and congestion. We see it as a potential danger to pedestrians, including children and seniors. An increase to the population density with 72 units going up. We're also somewhat dismayed at the fact that there are going to be multiple stories and looking into our backyard, so there's a privacy issue. We were also quite dismayed at the fact that it seems like all of the variances seem to be aimed towards reducing spaces so that they can put in more units. And with more units, we see that as somewhat unsafe and probably not very advisable. So that's sort of where we're at. We were kind of hoping for the fact that if this was going to be developed, the development would be maybe larger units that would be within the current guidelines without all these variances. So there would be fewer units and less traffic in the long run.
That's well understood, and certainly the preference. So just to reiterate what you probably already know, the zoning bylaw is intended to create those spaces in between buildings and in between neighbors and front yards, backyards, and side yards, to give us all the breathing room that we need and not to feel like we're on top of one another. So what we're seeing in this application is in fact, the applicant looking for some relief to accommodate a maximum development. So the decision that we're going to be thinking about this evening is whether or not this is a minor variance to what they're expected to meet in the zoning bylaw. And your points are concerns that we regularly hear in this meeting, and they will be considered as we proceed. Does any member of the committee have any questions of the presenter at this time? We're kind of early stage. Okay, so Jim, thanks so much for your contribution. I will ask now that Janice Barrett please join us.
So Janet,
Elaine?
Janice is not present tonight.
Okay, then Philip Wiebe.
Hi, yes, it's Philip Wiebe.
Wiebe, sorry. Right.
Yes. All right, good afternoon. Instead of asking questions, I'd just like to give a short presentation. I will need 4 minutes. So I'd just appreciate if the committee could give me the patience and listen to what I have to say. So
May I just ask, excuse me, may I just ask, could we also receive written comments from you? Is this a reiteration of what we've already read, or is it something
No, this is
new?
new.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so please just if you can just give me the respect to just listen to the whole thing that I want to say then, please.
That's what we're here for. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Philip Weeb. I'm the owner of one of the residents on Valerie Drive, and this house was purchased with my daughter Cassandra in mind as a place that she could live in or use in the future, and it is a key piece in my plan so that she'll be better off than her parents. Now that is in question with this development plan. She's here right now listening, and I want to ensure that she sees that we all have a voice and that the people can influence the future. However, I felt a sense of revulsion to hear yesterday that this committee did not want to hear the same arguments against this project, and I would need to present a new defense. Elected and unelected officials need objections to be repeated so that they understand the feelings of citizens. This can either be one person repeating hundreds of times or hundreds each repeating it once. Watching the previous public meeting, the city and Ambria speak as though this project will be approved with the requested variances. And you noted earlier that the city is saying that it should be approved. I do not see the committee taking the issues raised by all the citizens who have spoken so far seriously at all, and issues including the rezoning, building heights out of place in this neighborhood, second-story decks overlooking houses and yards, parking, traffic, noise, access, student rentals, and so on. So thus, as pressured, I will add a new take on the subject, and that's the future and climate change. My main argument starts with the knowledge that the townhouses and apartment buildings of this development will last for over a century. Within 25 years, the full impact of climate change will have hit us with the devastating effects. While switching from low density to medium density is desirable, we need to ensure that new developments promote the best of the existing housing. There are many 4-story applications currently in planning. Why is that? A great city plan, the pandemic, or some backroom deals? On the city's website, it reads in part, "We're working on innovative, sustainable approaches to mitigate the causes of climate change and adapt to the impacts of it." This is not enough. We need to reduce our contribution to the problem, and this development is neither innovative nor sustainable. Ambria wants to build 3-story townhouses that make a lot of profit for the developer, but people do not want them. There are too many stairs for young children and the elderly, whose numbers are increasing in our area and will continue to increase. More stairs mean less usable space, which means a loss of floor space and more waste. The site plan shows large roofs that inevitably will be a dark color, and along with the sizable area of pavement will lead to an even larger increase in local temperatures and a loss of drainage into the soil. Rainwater collection for irrigation, reflective paint, for example. While the city mandates 35% green space, this will be grass and a limited number of trees, which will be of little usefulness to other plants and animals. How many rabbits, birds, bees, and butterflies will this area attract? There are no wildlands, no community gardens, and private garbage collection equals no oversight of recycling. The city is forcing the developer to have a minimum number of parking spaces. No. Reduce the number of parking spaces in private roads so people walk. Encourage using public transportation and ride sharing, which is the future. The space between the fronts of the townhouses can be reduced, leading to more green space. These buildings will be cheaply made and continue to be inefficient, leading to energy waste, leaving it to the governments of the future to subsidize retrofits. At this stage, we have Ambria's plan that will see buildings people do not really want to live in, with outdated designs and materials that will produce a small scale increase in tax revenues, and that does not follow the city's own building code, nor does it in any way meet the climate change policy of the city and the rest of our country. Don't let us settle for the same old, same old. Where is the creativity and innovation that will lead to the betterment of our society, the city, and our environment? Build such that the developments will lead people to want to come to St. Catharines because we have a plan for the future that includes best practices and creative thinking. In conclusion, our generation, and the recent past generations have damaged our planet. What is the legacy that you want to leave your descendants and future generations? And this is for everyone listening right now, both Ambria and the city. If you approve this project as planned, will you be able to look your grandchildren in the eye and honestly say to them that you are leaving them a better world? I, for one, will not. Cassandra, do you have anything to say? This is Cassandra, my daughter. She's the one that this house was for, and she's the one that, when all of us are dead, is her generation that's going to be taken over. And what do you think of this plan?
Good.
Why?
It's just good.
So, do you think that this plan or these buildings are going to protect the earth?
No.
So, do you think that Ambria should go back and rethink their
More
project?
trees, less houses, and less killing fish and animals.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree more, and your contribution is well taken. So, Philip, thank you for your presentation. I'm going to decide if I hear points that might be able to be addressed as we go along, I'm going to try and do that. St. Catharines has a defined urban boundary, and we've built to the limit of it. So in a situation like Manhattan Island, which is the same kind of situation, things get denser, things go higher, and services are not extended. So that is one way of considering this project as contributing to not contributing to urban sprawl and so on. So there is an attempt by the provincial planning policy, as it defines St. Catharines in particular, to encourage intensification and because it is built to its urban boundary, which is bound by natural things such as the escarpment, and for now the green belt, and other man-made, human-made things such as canals and other waterways. So St. Catharines has been identified as a unique situation where the current zoning bylaw, through the provincial planning policy, does encourage intensification. So to that point, and I would like the planner engaged in this project to describe if this project were not sort of low-rise development, but in fact were a more dense apartment building, what does the current zoning bylaw permit by way of building height and that sort of thing for that building type?
Thank you. So through you, Chair, the site right now permits medium density residential R3, which allows for a density up to 99 units per hectare. The proposed development comes in at 67 units per hectare. So feasibly, there would be potential on the site for more units than what's proposed, subject to compliance with other zoning requirements. And an apartment building specifically on this site, because it's on an arterial road, would be allowed up to a height of 20 meters.
Okay. So, and the reason for bringing that up is that there are rules in place, and when developers are considering developing a property, presumably they look at those rules and come up with a scheme that, as close as they can, ideally fully, complies with the zoning bylaw. And in this case, as confirmed by the planner, they haven't hit a threshold of density with this development. So I just bring that to the last presenter's point about the environment and what density means for St. Catharines, and that means not expanding our urban boundary and paving over farmland, which for now the green belt prevents us from doing. So thank you for your comments, and we will keep on adding to the conversation with John Crossingham.
Sorry, is it possible to just ask one more question?
Well, sure.
Okay, so just from the representatives from Ambria, is there anything that's new or innovative, or that is an improvement of the normal sort of buildings that we already see in this day and age?
Well, I'm going to answer that question, if I may. in that in what I do for a living, the building code of Ontario is very geared toward energy efficiency and is getting more so up until 2025. So every year there is implementation. Builders are required to provide certain levels of efficiency, which go beyond many other jurisdictions in North America. So presumably the developer will not be doing anything excessive, which we might all like, but just by adhering to the current Ontario building code, these buildings will be way more efficient than my 100-year-old house that I'm talking to you from now, but which has also has carbon capture for 100 years from the wood that's in here. So we're going to leave that your question at that, in that these will be efficient even at a minimum standard.
So, but basically, you're saying that Ambria is doing nothing for my child, and they are just adding to the problem.
I'm saying that any new construction is better than the buildings that were built before it, and at this point,
so Ambria is going to continue to build the planet for my child.
John Crossingham, thank you so much, Philip.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
John?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair and members. My name's John Crossingham. I am a retired lawyer. I spent 42 years practicing municipal and planning law in the city of St. Catharines. I am going to address one issue and one issue only, and that is the fact that this minor variance does not comply with the official plan. And in particular, I had asked for a screen share of Schedule E8.
And I'm sure that we are going to bring that up. Is that correct, Will or Elaine? Okay, so just one moment while the technology switches over.
Yeah, well, that's fine. So what I'm addressing is one of the 4 tests that are set out regarding the desirability of minor variances, and that is the compliance with the official plan. Here is the official plan, and while it's a little hard to see at this scale, what this shows clearly is that the designation for the site in question is low density residential with a maximum of 32 units per hectare. I've read the planning report, and the planning report seems to indicate that, notwithstanding this, that there's a provision that puts multiple residents on this site from an official plan perspective. I understand the zoning bylaw. And that statement is, in my submission, not true, and I would ask you to follow with me as we go through this. I believe the basis for the assertion by the planning department is section 8.3 sub 2 sub little I of the St. Catharines official plan, which states low, medium, or high density residential standards are set out in Part E district plans, which is what we have on the screen here in front of us, to establish residential development parameters on existing school, and place of worship sites where redevelopment or residential purposes may be proposed. Okay, so what that is saying very clearly, and it's dealing solely with the issue of redevelopment on these sites, it's stating very clearly that this site is low density. The plan goes on to say, and it doesn't use the word notwithstanding, which is in the planning report, which it's catnip for lawyers. I mean, notwithstanding is my favorite word, but it doesn't say that. What the plan goes on to say is medium density residential standards will generally apply to those properties located on arterial or collector roads. And if we look at the plan, we can see that that has happened along some, but not all. The word used is generally. And so if we look at the plan, it's a little hard to see here, and I wish my pointer would work on it. But if you go to the Coptic church site, just north of the railway line, you'll see that it is brown, medium density. If you carry on down Glen Ridge, there's the Southern Community Church site on the opposite side across from the Petro-Canada station, that's medium. If we go down to St. Julia Church and Dennis Morris on Glen Morris, you'll see that that is medium. If you go to Sir Winston, you'll see that that is medium. So that is what the plan says generally will happen. However, if you go to the Church of the Transfiguration at the corner of Glenridge and Glendale, you'll see it's low density. Similarly with Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints on Glenridge, low density. And if we go to the site in question, it is also low density. So the plan very clearly states, for the purposes of this redevelopment, that it must be at a low density. And based on that, my submission is that all of these variances must fail.
Well, that would be the Achilles heel of the application, and bringing that to our attention is much appreciated. Given the gravity of the points that you're making, perhaps we'll allow the city planner to comment on whether or not it is the fact that this particular property is on an arterial road that they feel allows them to apply the medium density, whereas if it was not on an arterial road, it would most certainly be the current city plan is low density.
Before we go to that question, that is not the question to ask.
Well, that's the one I'm going to ask. We'll if she answers that, then you're not being stymied here. You can still continue.
Okay.
So for my own benefit, planner, can you explain, is the arterial road across the front of this property a determining factor in the determining what density should be on this site?
So certainly the property is on an arterial road, so it does fall subject to that policy in the OP. And in addition, the zoning is in place on the property for medium density. So there are also policies in the OP regarding residential density that allow for development in accordance with a higher density level than what's in the OP if the zoning is in place.
Okay, and that zoning is in place as the report suggested.
Correct.
Okay, so to the presenter, if that was the right question or wrong question, I don't know, but the answer was clear to me. Please continue.
Okay, well, there is no provision in the plan for a higher density on these properties. What the plan clearly states is that generally higher densities are considered along arterial roads, and the plan has done that. But it did not do it here. And there's no waffle room here.
Okay.
And it is not a question of whether or not this committee wants to rewrite the official plan. The official plan is absolutely crystal clear that this is a low density area. And there is nothing in I presume Taya has no greater authority for her statement about arterial roads than the one that I quoted to you from, and if she could answer that question, then we could make some progress.
So the question I asked did not phrase what you wanted. So we're not questioning anybody's authority to make this comment, are we, John?
What I'm saying is, no, well, yes, I am. We don't have the right to cross-examine here. That takes all our fun away. But through you to Taya, is there any authority in the official plan for your statement about arterial roads other than the one that I quoted from section 8.3.2 sub little I?
Okay, so you're addressing me, and I will ask the planner if she feels that she's in a position to answer that question, or if it's not if it's already been answered in the report that we received. So, Taya?
through you, Chair, certainly that specific policy I am looking at, and it does speak to the arterial roads. That is an element. But I would also like to say that we look at the OP as a whole and the intent of the OP. So while I will acknowledge that specific policy, we do have to take the whole OP into an account. So I don't want to, I just want to make sure that's clear, that
It's fine.
the entire document.
And with respect to the whole OP, it does touch on the fact that St. Catharines is designated as a places to grow. We are built to our urban environment, and there's no question that our zoning bylaws are intended to increase density and are written to support that as appropriately. Okay, thank you. So I think that's the point was made by this presenter. We've had adequate discussion about it and clarification from the planner. The members of the committee, do you have any specific questions of the current presenter or of the planner? Clarifications? No? Okay, thank you, John. We're going to move on to Debbie Sherman and Jeannie Berg.
They are not present. I don't see them here today.
Okay, Renee Aguilera?
Yes, that's correct. Renee Aguilera.
Yes, so at this point, if you could add some new discussion here, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, there's a couple of things that I would like to mention. I believe that reducing from 3.5 to 3 meters would not be convenient for the same owner of the house, because there's people that may or may not be very good on maneuvering. And considering the places that these houses are going to be built in, I presume that maneuvering would be reduced. So that, I think, increases the risk of accidents and damages to private property. That's on one end. One of the other points that I wanted to mention is that they are asking for a reduction of accessible parking. I myself lived through needing accessible parking when my late wife got sick, and I unfortunately didn't have access to that because they were already taken. So taking this accessible parking out just because we need more space to build a house is taking also out the possibility of a person that may need it in the future not have it. So that is one of the items that I definitely think should be denied declined, because that is a very important point. And finally, one thing that I want to say is that you did mention that there's rules in place for a reason. Now, all of these are within rules. Asking for variances is just trying to avoid the rules that are already in place. So I think that for that very same reason, all of these variances should be declined or turned down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You're right. This whole committee exists only to consider the variation of the rules within the guidelines that we are given, and those are the 4 tests that have been mentioned previously. Your comment, I just wanted to address, you mentioned about the navigability of vehicles through the site. This site, through the requirements of the Ontario Building Code, has to be able to accommodate a fire truck. So I know for a fact that the roads have to be a certain width, and there has to be certain turning radii to allow our fire truck to go all the way back into this development and appropriately provide the services that they need should an emergency occur. So similarly, that would apply to an ambulance and so on. So since that safety concern is built into the Ontario Building Code, and I can see that the dimensions on the plan have incorporated that, a fire truck navigating through the site and versus a private vehicle navigating through the site, it meets the minimum requirements, and maybe even better than in some of our smaller, older areas like Port Dalhousie. So so that has been addressed in this particular plan. And then again, the 3-meter wide reduction in a parking space with obstructions on both sides is almost exclusively within the garage. So if the prospective buyer feels that their Hummer is going to be compromised by the small garage, presumably they'll buy somewhere else. And a person who is committed to the fact that this place is surrounded nearby by amenities and it's a walkable area and doesn't require a large vehicle, this might be the housing development for them. So it does, my point is, in all of St. Catharines, this type of dwelling, higher density, does contribute to the overall building stock and give many people different options of how and where they want to live. So thank you for your comments. And now Rebecca Lewis is on next on my list. Hello, Rebecca.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
So I do have a written out statement that I would like to read, and there will probably be some points within the statement that you or the planner would like to address. You can interrupt me, but I would like an opportunity to read my entire statement.
Is this statement different from the one that was submitted, hard copy?
What was submitted was actually a question for clarification of the plans, because I've never navigated building codes and I was uncertain about things. Afterwards, I did a lot more reading. I figured things out. So this is not questions. This is a statement.
Okay, so if you could keep it within 5 minutes, would be
Yep.
very appreciative.
Yep, no problem. So good evening. My name is Rebecca Lewis, and I live on Valerie Drive. I have registered for tonight's meeting in order to speak against the plan for 150 Glendale and what appears to be poor handling by the city. The plan for 150 Glendale seems all mixed up. The city seems to have decided that the development can be considered townhomes, an apartment complex, or a private road development, all at the same time. This has enabled planners to pick and choose which bylaws best suit their desires, instead of using the zoning bylaws to blend the development into the surrounding community as they are supposed to be used. One example mentioned by the planning department for the notes of this meeting is tandem parking. This is not allowed for apartments. However, the city building department has allowed it because tandem parking is permitted within a private road development. And that's fine, except within a private road development, bylaw section 5.7, 6 meters is required to a garage. And this is not applied to blocks 1 and 2 because I guess they're assuming they're apartments. Also, as per section 5.8, a private road development only allows a maximum of 8 detached dwelling units. And I'm not sure how that applies with apartments versus townhomes, but hopefully that can be explained afterwards. I believe this development requires more variances than they applied for. It's not a full plan that's been presented. As is, this development does not blend into the R1 area surrounding the building site. Allowing this development as is will more than double the number of units off Valerie Drive and will be overbearing to the surrounding houses, the majority of which are single-story dwellings. The developer is shoehorning this development into an area where it does not fit, and I request that no variances be granted in terms of setbacks. Parking for this development will be paramount. As mentioned, this will significantly increase the housing on Valerie. The area is popular for student rentals, and you can usually tell which are student houses by the crammed driveways and additional cars parked on the street. And thus, parking requirements for this development needs to be practical and no corners should be cut. The majority of the parking in this development is specific to housing blocks, meaning the majority of the parking is either within garages or driveways for individual units and cannot be shared amongst the entire unit or various blocks. Each apartment should be considered individually to provide adequate parking. Block 2 has 15 units requiring 19 parking spots. Block 1 has 18 units requiring 23 parking spots, etc. The majority of designated parking in the development is within garages, and the builder has requested a variance to shrink the garage to 3 meters wide. I will say, you were talking about Hummers. I drive a Honda Fit. It's one of the smallest compact cars that you can get. You know what? My garage is bigger than that, is over 3.5, and I still struggle entering and exiting the car. At 3 meters, I don't think I could get in and out of my Honda Fit certainly not use doors on both sides of the cars. That is certain. So with that, the bylaws require parking spots of a minimum of 3.5 meters if blocked on one side. These garages are completely enclosed, and the proposed 3-meter size will prevent opening the car doors. Either these garages must be enlarged to be considered a parking spot or be taken out of consideration as parking spots altogether. In closing, a private road development should not mean that anything goes within the confines of the development. There are bylaws which dictate how such a development should be shaped, and it's not up to the developer or building department to choose what's most convenient for them. We need to build communities which are in character with the city and immediate area, rather than building developments which ignore bylaws and negatively impact existing residents. Thank you.
Thank you. So I used to drive a smart car. Now that I actually don't have a car at all. But one comment could be, well, one comment I have is the municipality has a minimum in a parking lot. They have a minimum style width of 2.6 meters, I believe, something like that, less than 3. Recognizing the fact that the temporary inconvenience of parking in a shopping mall and trying to can opener your way in and out of your car is appropriate for a parking lot. So my point there is that cars come in a variety of sizes, but the zoning bylaw specifically decides to zone in on one dimension and say that, you know, for the clarity, that is the rule. If you were to provide a garage in each of these buildings that could accommodate a Hummer, I'm sure more people would drive Hummers. If you were to provide a bit of a hardship, which this variance would do for residents, then hopefully it would force them to buy smaller cars and not accommodate their desire for a giant SUV. So in some respects, having a smaller garage actually has a positive influence on the kind of vehicles people might buy after buying their house.
As a driver of a small car, though, I already don't use my garage because it's an older garage, it's narrow. These garages aren't going to be used.
No one uses their garage. So
well, then why count them as parking spots?
Because that's you cannot dictate whether someone is or is not going to use their garage. And to my other point I was going to make, similarly, we cannot assume that there are going to be students living in here or single family residences. So for the purposes of any development, if it's zoned for single family residences and they show a dwelling unit, then it is assumed that it's a single family residence who will be occupying the space, because that's the only humane thing to consider. We're not exclusionary of gender, race, or the use of a space. So the other point I heard was the confusion about townhouse or stacked townhouse, which doesn't exist in the zoning bylaw definition. It's an apartment building. So any building which has a horizontal and vertical separation between units is an apartment building. Any building which has just a vertical separation is a townhouse. I believe that's correct. So some of these buildings called stacked towns that are 4 stories, I'll have Taya confirm, they're actually considered apartment buildings. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Correct. Okay, so this term stacked townhouses is some developer term which doesn't exist in the real world, at least not in St. Catharines where my world is. So that's so yes, there are apartment buildings in here, and there are townhouses in here, but apartment buildings for sure. And I wanted to address the parking requirement. I mean, we spend a lot of our time designing our cities to accommodate cars. I ride a bicycle, and I borrow my wife's car when I need to, and that's what living in a dense urban environment affords. And living on Glendale in this area, a bicycle or a short walk gets you to every kind of store, amenity, and food service place that you need to go. And that would be one of the things that would attract certain people to this kind of environment if it gets built. But with respect to the accessible parking stalls and the parking not associated with a driveway for these units, the variance request is to go from 3 to 2 accessible parking stalls. And can I just have these planning person confirm that the parking shown here in terms of quantity meets the requirement of the zoning bylaw, not the size, but the number of parking spots available?
So through you, Mr. Chair, when we include the garage, the undersized garages that they've requested the variance for, yes, they've met the parking requirement.
Okay, thank you. So just to finish up with this current presenter, yes, there are variances being requested, which happens frequently to squeeze some things down in size, but it doesn't appear that it makes them useless. It just restricts the opportunities that people have, and ultimately, I would suggest that the person buying the house can determine whether or not that's a problem for them, whether they can only get out one side of the car or the other. But generally speaking, the plan provides a parking spot for every required parking spot that needs to be on the site to alleviate street parking. Although, yes, they are smaller than the zoning bylaw permits. So,
and I do believe that's going to prevent them being used. And therefore, I mean, you're here, there are bylaws for a reason.
there are.
And you're telling me the bylaws don't matter.
No, what I'm saying is the bylaws, as I said before, create this distance between where we live and how we live so that we have breathing room and privacy in our backyards of some amount, minimum amount. Most of these minor variants, so this committee is charged with looking at situations where something cannot happen to its full potential according to the zoning bylaw, except for some review of some variances in various locations. So this developer, whoever they are, has brought this plan to the city. They've identified the variances, and they're going through the process which exists in every community in Ontario to ask for permission or for consideration that these variances could be varied. And
may I ask about the variance that wasn't even asked for, that's mentioned in section 5.7 about the distance to a garage? That's not even being taken into account. They haven't applied for a variance for that.
Okay, this is why we have access to the city's planner, and she can address whether it was required or not.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So in the zoning bylaw, in this zone, a private road development is permitted. And what is proposed is a private road development. And within a private road development, they're allowed any of the unit types that are permitted in that zone. So in R3, they would be allowed, there's a number of unit types or dwelling types that are listed. So detached dwelling, townhouses, and apartments, to name a few. The zoning bylaw for private road development then refers you to a table, it's table 5.7, to determine what setbacks apply in a private road development. Which is where you're getting the distance to a garage from the private road. And at the bottom of that table, there's a sort of footnote that says that apartment buildings in private road developments are subject to the yard and height regulations in section 5.5. So that table 5.7 does not apply to apartment buildings in a private road. It only applies to the townhouses for this development. And then the setbacks for the apartment building come from that table 5.5, which is why the 6 meter setback to a garage doesn't apply
Okay.
to the apartments.
And then,
Rebecca,
but then,
Rebecca, to your point though, I have to deal with this document daily, and it
yes,
reads horribly, and it takes you all over the place, and you're dog earing all kinds of things. So it's understandable that it's not an easy document to follow.
but if these are considered apartments and tandem parking isn't allowed in apartments, I mean, that's another variance that should have been applied for, right?
So the parking, there's a requirement for parking for private road development. It's a specific parking requirement of 1.25 spaces per unit. And there's a
Yes.
footnote there that tandem parking is permitted for private road development.
Okay, so that's it. That's
Okay.
We haven't actually, Rebecca, I hope you appreciate the fact that we have heard you and we have addressed the main points that you've contributed this evening. And
Okay.
it all comes down to the asterisks and the referrals to other paragraphs, and that's what the city has done in their report to us for us all to have read. So Robert Odell, are you with us?
I also think
Oh,
David
sorry.
Ringer has been putting his hand up for the last 5 minutes.
I'm sorry,
But
David.
I'm sorry, I'm going to mute myself. Thank you very much, Greg.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, David. I didn't appreciate the fact you're trying to get my attention.
Not a problem. I just wanted to get into the conversation, Greg, where you were supportive of 3 meter garages because it might focus people on smaller cars. I don't really see that as a relevant point here. I think the relevant point here is that the bylaw is 3.5 meters. And what Rebecca was speaking to was she was concerned that the move to 3 meters may be insufficient.
Certainly.
My issue with the 3.5 meter issue is that we've had, I'll say, a great number of requests recently for reduced parking spaces. And I'm beginning to wonder whether or not this bylaw even applies any longer. And I'd like to discuss with the planner as to how rigid a 3.5 meter requirement should be within confined on 2 side parking space.
With all due respect to your comments, I'd like to address that when the committee members are discussing the motion after we've heard from all the presenters. It is what it is. It's clearly noted that 3.5 is expected. They're asking for 3. And my comments were not intended to sway or suggest my opinion one way or another. It was just merely to address the fact that parking stalls in mall parking lots are smaller than 3 meters, but somehow people make it work. So Robert Odell, did you
Yes,
want
I am here, Mr. Chair. I did provide brief comments to the committee, and I would like to expand on them, be less than 5 minutes.
Excellent. Please proceed.
Okay. My concern is that the project, as it is now configured, is not compatible with the surrounding R1 neighborhood. Normally, compatibility is achieved by a gradation of densities, R1 beside R2, beside R3, and so on. In this case, density gradation is not possible, and therefore measures and standards need to be applied to achieve compatibility. These are set out in the official plan in various sections, but in particular, Part C, policies 4.2 and 4.3 that are attached to my comments to the committee. Section 4.3 sub 1 reads, quote, as a basis for evaluating compatibility and achieving design excellence, development and redevelopment will be designed in a manner that reflects the principles established Part C, 4.2 urban design principles, end of quotation. The planning report rightly reports on the designation of this property and its use. It does not, however, speak to the compatibility sections in the OP that I just referred to. In fact, the report states that, quote, notwithstanding the low density designation, the property can be redeveloped at a medium density standard. But quite frankly, I was not able to find a notwithstanding statement of this sort in the plan, nor were there standards to accompany this notwithstanding statement. The compatibility policies I listed above should therefore be used to fit this project into the neighborhood. Concerning variance number 3 that was in my comment to the committee, the planning report again rightly notes that the front of this property is Valerie Drive, not Glendale. This then brings into question, however, the compatibility matter of building massing. This has not been addressed and in fact is exacerbated by the variance being applied for. In summary, an R3 use of the subject property is appropriate, however, not as currently designed. In my opinion, the project requires a redesign. In conclusion, the item number 3 variances, in my opinion, is not minor in nature and is not in conformity with the official plan, and therefore is not good planning. Any questions?
Thank you for your comments. I will ask, did any member of the committee have any questions of the presenter? It's not unlike comments we had heard previously.
Pardon me?
No, I'm making a comment to the committee that the bit about the notwithstanding and the use of the R3 zoning at the discretion of the city based on the zoning bylaw and the arterial route was something we already discussed.
I was talking about section part C.
I understand, and the committee has not suggested they have any questions. So thank you for your comments. Wow. I just wanted to again confirm with the planner that the maximum height of 24 meters building height would be like an 8-story apartment building, which, as I understand, would be acceptable for this site or not?
A maximum height of 20 meters is permitted for an apartment building. Yeah.
Right, and this site would accommodate this current zoning would accommodate that on this site?
Yes.
Okay. And the only reason why I'm reiterating that is when thinking about the appropriateness of this particular development, the other extreme is what I just described. So redevelopment can I guess, from the perspective of some people, be worse. And I'm not saying that, you know, this is the devil that you know kind of thing, but there are the zoning bylaw provides a range of building heights and shapes and sizes, and this reflects what at 4 stories. This reflects, you know, a low-rise development or mid-rise development. So Robert,
I understand that, Mr. Chair, but my point was that this is an R3 adjacent to R1s. And
Understood.
Normally, where there is the opportunity to have density divisions by R1, R2, R3, that's the way of dealing with compatibility. Here, where there is a direct adjacency with an R1, tests of compatibility should be used. So I've been in this business for 40 years, developing and building and planning. So I clearly understand what the bylaw and the official plan provide. What I'd like to see is where were the matters of compatibility addressed?
And as was commented, and just to reply to that, what I heard previously from the planner is we're looking at the city as a whole, not this neighborhood next to another neighborhood off of this street. And we know that St. Catharines can only look within to develop, and the zoning bylaw that we are currently referring to was approved through a public process that every citizen could have attended and been made aware of what the potentials were going on in their city. And what we're seeing here is the implementation of that process that happened 5 or 6 years ago, and now we're testing it against what we know. So thank you for your comments. We're now, if Sarah Mayo is available. Sarah, hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Mr. Chairman, committee member, my name is Sarah. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you repeated again and again that this planning is conformed with zoning bylaw. What's the purpose of having zoning bylaw? To protect the value and enjoyment of properties or destroy it. The traffic issue, parking issues 72 units will bring, we already addressed this in April 6th online meeting. This planning didn't care. By the way, no concerns were answered from that time to now. Taking away a boarding house owner's privacy due to the close distance and the height of building, it didn't care. My backyard is right connected with the planned street townhouse. The distance between us is just 4.7 meters, and the height of the townhouse is 10 meters. My house is just 4 meters. You can imagine that. And you are saying this planning is conformed with the bylaw. Interpreting that, you are saying my privacy is worth nothing. If that's the information the bylaw convenes, I take it, but I don't think that's why we having zoning bylaw. So please, dear committee members, you must know what this development will bring to this community and think it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Your points are very clearly made and understood.
Thank you.
I have, does any member of the committee have any question? No? Okay, so thank you. And then finally, on our list, Nathan Kutcher. If you're still with us here. Hello, Nathan.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
So St. Catharines has been my home for nearly 15 years, and I've lived on Valerie Drive for almost all of that. I've always been proud to say that I live in St. Catharines, but right now I'm absolutely disgusted with it. I've worked in the construction industry for over 25 years, and I've never seen something so blatantly inappropriate. I'm not against this property being developed. It's my job to supply these things. I am so against this. It's so wrong for the area. Ambria has done nothing to blend this development with the existing houses. What they're proposing will dominate and destroy the neighborhood. The fact that they continue to push far beyond what is reasonable, and the fact they're asking for more with these variances is completely unacceptable. Before the city moves forward with any approvals, there needs to first be clarification about what's being proposed to be built. Any approval should be based off of plans that actually represent what is allowed, not what the builder thinks they should be entitled to. Stacked towns are not part of the zoning bylaw, as you pointed out. These buildings do not fit the description of townhomes, fourplexes, quadplexes. They are apartment buildings, which you've said, which fall under different set of rules than this project has been designed for. These rules that Ambria is asking to be changed were put in place to prevent builders like them from creating disasters like the one they are proposing. Before I go any further, I would like to point out that in previous meetings, the city said that this was within the zoning and could not be changed. 2.19 development constraints from the zoning bylaw states, in addition to the zone provisions of this bylaw, lands may be subject to additional regulation or restriction of use by the city. I interpret this to mean that the city does have the right to tell Ambria that this development does not fit the R1 zone that surrounds it. I believe that the city has been negligent in allowing this to go as far as it has. To the matters to be discussed at this meeting. Number one, minimum width of the parking space obstructed on two sides from 3.5 meters to 3 meters, which is 9'10", not 10 feet. In 2 inches, it seems minor, but when you're shoehorning a car into a garage, like a Hummer's not going to fit in a 3.5 meter garage. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
So these obstructions are not pillars in a parking, in a parking garage. If they're pillars, whatever. They're solid garage walls that cannot be wiggled around when entering or exiting a vehicle. 3.5 meters is 11.5 feet, which is already tight. 3 meters wide is unusable and unreasonable to park and exit a car. Unusable garages will reduce the parking capacity of the site that already does not have enough parking for the number of cars that will be parked there. And comparing it to a parking lot at a mall, like, give me a break. There's like plenty of space in between. Like, you're using the other parking spot to get in and out. Like, am I wrong about that?
You are if there are 2 cars on the other side of you.
You know, it's just, yeah, no, I'll walk over to the Penn Center here. And guess what? I live very close. My wife bikes everywhere, and she very seldomly bikes anywhere because it's just not convenient, and everybody has a car. You have to have a car here. So number 2, reducing the minimum accessible parking spaces from 3 to 2 spaces. Why not eliminate all the accessible spaces? If someone needs accessible parking, they'll never be able to access the units because of all the stairs. The parking spots will never be used except illegally, which who's going to enforce that? And so the parking spots won't even be available anyways for those who actually need them. 3.8.1 of the city's bylaw plan, accessible parking exemption, or located within a private road development, the following uses shall be exempt from providing accessible parking: detached, semi-detached, duplex, triplex, fourplex, quadplex, townhouse dwellings. So as originally planned, these were supposed to be townhouses, which is the way this plan was drawn and needs to be redrawn. Why is this even a discussion? You know, because they're apartments. So why are we trying to use setbacks that were intended for townhouses? Number 3, minimum rear setback to an apartment building from 11.6 meters, which is almost 37 feet, which is the height of the building, to 5.5 meters, which is 18 feet. That's a reduction of half. And what is this? It's like you must follow the rules unless you don't want to. Ambry's intent was to do stacked towns, but our city does not allow it. So rather than redesigning the apartments, they can just go forward with their plans. That's crazy. Why has the city forgotten about the rules made to protect its citizens? At my job, I deal with municipalities of Niagara constantly. I sure wish they were forgiving with all permit applications as they seem to be with Ambria. Now that it's been established that these are in fact apartments, I would like to ask that the city require Ambria to come up with a new site plan that actually conforms to the rules set in place. This might also be a good time to point out that parking in tandem as proposed as a solution by the city is not allowed with parking buildings. And just because they put it into a private road development shouldn't change that. Number 4, minimum front yard setback to an apartment building. At only 8 inches, this is perhaps the only one of these that's actually minor. Even so, it's hardly like the property in question is too small. This is not a typical infill trying to make the most out of a missized lot. What they're proposing is just too big. The property has far more than enough space. The setbacks were made for a reason and should not be compromised. Number 5, minimum front yard setback to a platform structure with height above 1.2 meters or greater. If this were a single unit on a small lot, this might make sense. But this is not the case. It's a greedy builder asking for too much. Number 6 and 7 are the same. Please show me another project in St. Catharines that has so flagrantly disregarded the neighborhood and the rules and was still approved. Number 8, minimum distance from private road to a dwelling, 3 meters to 2.35 meters. These rules were made for a reason. 65 centimeters or 2 feet is a lot of space in a tight area that needs to be accessible to emergency vehicles. The way this development was already proposed will be impossible for fire trucks to properly access it. I don't doubt a fire truck can drive in. How about backing out? The city should be ashamed and embarrassed this project has made it this far, as it's a complete outrage and takes advantage of a loophole, to my knowledge, up until now has not been exploited in St. Catharines. This project does not fit the neighborhood. It does not fit the intent of the city's plan, and these variances must not be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. You went through each of the 8 variances and addressed them all. So thank you for clarifying your understanding of those variances. I will again restate that the minimum requirements for emergency vehicle access have been provided. They wouldn't be allowed to get away with that. Hence, there's no variance for that. The variance.
How do you drive a truck into the far reaches of this and get it out?
Yep, I know it's here. The fire department contributes to the requirements, and they've met those requirements. So, but that's not your point. That's not your argument. Your argument is about the 8 variances that you read out. So I'll just ask the any committee members if they have any specific questions to you, and then we're going to ask the applicant if they have anything they wish to add. So committee members, anything in particular of this presenter? No? Okay. Thank you to all the presenters who stuck on line to voice their concerns and opinions. We will now ask the applicant if they managed to hear anything in those comments that they wish to address, not that they have to necessarily.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I think the comments and the report summarize the variances well. I believe that, if there is any other questions that you may want to ask me, you can, but I think probably at this point you'll be asking enough staff. But no, we're in support, and we heard the public here, and thank everybody for coming out and sharing their opinions here today.
Thank you. So do any committee members have any questions of any final questions of the applicant? All right, so throughout the discussion, I have inserted what I hope was clarification and information, and maybe a little bit of too much commentary about my thoughts on some of these matters. But I think that everyone who spoke should feel that they've been heard and their questions addressed. So at this point, with no more presentations and no more comments from the applicant, we're going to reduce the scope of the conversation to just within the committee members. And that can either happen now before a motion is read in, or someone could make a motion and then we can discuss it before the vote. So David Ringler.
I'd like to come back to the width of the parking spaces that are confined on 2 sides. And as I've mentioned, it's feeling more and more like 3.5 meters is an irrelevant number from a planning perspective. And I'd like some clarification on that topic.
So to the city planner, the question basically is, it seems as though the city is quite willing to propose the acceptance of a 3-meter width for a garage, when in fact, at the time the zoning bylaw was written, it was felt that 3.5 for obstruction on both sides was proper. Is there any particular reason why this conclusion is being met in this particular application?
So certainly the parking standards are outlined in the zoning bylaw, and we have been seeing this come up more and more often, specifically with obstructed parking spaces. And it's something that's identified in our zoning bylaw for staff to look at in further detail through a future housekeeping amendment. So it's something that we anticipate giving a good look at in future policy reviews. For the subject application, we considered that there are policies in the official plan that support reductions to parking standards in certain circumstances, such as being on arterial roads well served by transit, having cycling facilities, and other criteria, and that this site met those and was suitable to consider a reduction. And the question then is, do you do a reduction in the overall number of parking spaces on a site, or do you reduce the width itself? And this is sort of an internal discussion we have constantly going back and forward, where does it make sense to reduce it or identify that those parking spaces are there, albeit undersized? And so that is the proposal in this case, is to recognize these as spaces, to acknowledge that they are there and that they can facilitate parking vehicles, but they will be undersized and not meeting the standards.
Okay, for me, it sounds like a major part of the discussion, consideration about that, is this idea of it being in a walkable community where amenities are nearby and the reliance on a vehicle isn't as great as in a suburban situation. So what I heard you saying was all of those things contribute to the fact that that the city recognizes the fact that the reliance on big vehicles is not the same here on this particular location. David, does any of that explanation assist you?
Not really.
Okay, that doesn't have to, because you know, we're here as individuals, and we're reviewing these things as individuals, and when we make our final decision. Does any other member of the committee have any questions? Carrie Leask? Oh, you're muted, Carrie.
You're right. Through you to Taya. It's on another topic, but on occasion we come across files that, due to their location within St. Catharines, and oftentimes it happens in the south end of St. Catharines, it conjures up in people's minds the types of occupants that might be attracted to the specific property. What kind of tools do you have at your disposal to take that into consideration, if any?
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the committee member. So the city has no control over who purchases, rents, or occupies a unit. In planning, we look at the types of units and the density and things that have to do with land use. But when it comes to the actual occupancy and the people who reside in a place, there are no control mechanisms from a planning perspective or any perspective. It becomes a human rights issue of people have the right to live in a unit, and there are no controls over who those people may or may not be.
Has there been any study by the city in terms of the impact, and I think of vehicles, because with a certain type of occupant, there seems to be a propensity to multiple vehicles. Has the city studied that in terms of the after effect that approvals might have on the surrounding areas in terms of stress on the parking and so on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if there have been any specific studies done by the city to look at specific neighborhoods that maybe, closer proximity to Brock, where we might assume that more students would live, and look at impacts to parking. There may have been in just accumulation of parking studies over the years. We might have some sort of collected data on the topic, but there's nothing in particular I could point to on the topic.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to summarize this is meant to address the comments that we heard. So most of these variances, as far as I'm concerned, are internal to the site, the private road development. They're internal to the building, and the matters that are directly of significance to adjacent property lines are the setbacks. And what I'm seeing is variances 5 and 6 are setbacks to a street, not adjacent properties. The variances 2 variances per 3 are adjacent to properties, but this is a situation where they're referring to that back property line as a rear yard, a backyard, if you will. And we know that the amenity space for these buildings is at the back of the building, whereas due to the positioning of these buildings, we're actually at the side of the building. So it's not uncommon in our review of applications, if a building isn't square to the front of the property and traditional, if the building is twisted 90 degrees like these are, that the side yard and the rear yard can be interchangeable as long as there's that amenity space available. So just in our discussion, I don't see where the variances to the zoning bylaw that have direct impact on the adjacent neighbors appear to be any particular hardship, given the definition of a rear yard and a backyard. At this point, it appears as though Nathan might be asking for a question, but we're done the public presentation, so I'm not ignoring you. It's just that the time has passed for that. So at this point, if there's no more discussion among the committee, I would ask that someone make a motion regarding this application. Don't all speak at once. Adam, you were quicker than David on the draw, so we'll let you take it.
All right, I know Dave usually has good ones for this, but you're stuck with me now.
We're not stuck with you. What have you learned from David? Show us.
Oh boy. All right. So following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance application A2621 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved, subject to any conditions outlined in the technical report, as the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, so the motion is before us. The motion is in support of the staff recommendation that the applicant's 8 variances be approved. There's no difference, no deviation from that in the motion. Is there any more discussion required? If not, all those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? So we are at a dead heat, and Elaine, I don't know what that means.
What that means is that under our procedural bylaw, under our section about hearing proceedings, section M, that a tie vote ends up being a denial of the application.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So to the applicant, you may be surprised to know that your application has been denied due to the tie vote, which is something that I'm not sure has ever happened. So it's either a refresher or news to me. So to the presenters, the application has been denied. So presumably you are happy with that. Again, as was spoken about at the beginning of the meeting, there is a process by which the applicant can go to the LPAT system and have this reviewed again. So, and I think the City of St. Catharines will let the presenters from the community know the status of this project, Elaine, if it goes to that point.
Yes, anyone who submitted written comments or spoke at the hearing this evening, they will receive a notice of decision in the mail. If the application does get appealed, all the information then goes to LPAT, and they will circulate. It's a different procedure. They will advise everyone who participated of a future hearing.
Okay, so that's not a foregone conclusion. It's just a part of the process. So democracy has been displayed and shown to work in this case, regardless of the outcome. We had good discussion. We had participation from all sides, and we had a fair vote. So that concludes item number 4 in our agenda, 3 in our agenda. We're moving on to item number 4. Which is 12A.
Thank you, committee.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Just want to say thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Appreciate it. Thank you. 12A Meredith Drive, minor variance application. So that is, the city has reviewed the floor area and percentage of a interior accessory dwelling unit that's been applied for. And according to their report, they're recommending approval. So the interior accessory dwelling unit is larger in floor area and relative percentage to the primary dwelling unit than the bylaw allows, and they're asking for a variance 1 and 2 to address that. So to the applicant, the point of me reiterating that is we understand what you want, and we understand what the city has suggested. So if there's anything more you wish to add, now is the time. Otherwise, we can proceed with reviewing your application. So,
hi, Mr. Chair.
Yes, hello.
Hey, Jordan Heckman here. I'm the owner of Jordan Station Design Co. Just speaking on behalf of my clients. I'll keep it short and sweet. We've reviewed the notes as set out in the report, and we agree with the recommendation from staff.
That is short and sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So any questions of the committee members to the applicant regarding this file? If not, then we can move right into David Ringler making a motion.
On consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance application A2721 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved, as the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
I've got a feeling it's not going to be a tie vote. All those in favor? So your application has been approved unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So item number 5 on our agenda is 159 Beach Street minor variance application. The planning report recommends approval of the application. There are 7 minor variances relating to the conversion of a detached dwelling unit to a duplex dwelling. Okay, so that is what we know about the project. Does the applicant and/or agent representing the applicant have anything they wish to add?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Good evening. I have a presentation I'd like to present. I'll be brief on it. First of all, we've reviewed the report prepared by staff and are in agreement with the recommendations set out therein. The property, as you can see, is located in the Fitzgerald neighborhood between on Beach Street between Henry and George. Next slide, please. It's R2, which permits a variety of housing types. Next slide, please. And this is the current street view of the property. You can see it's undergone many renovations to date to improve the exterior facade.
Is that a stop work order on the front door?
No.
Okay. Thought it was.
The stairs, of course, are just temporary, but go back in terms of being off to the side there. So there's a number of variances associated with the request to permit. Sorry, next slide, Elaine. To permit the essentially what would be a duplex, which is and the purpose of that is just because the lower level basement is not as conducive to a unit. The nominal floor area is 75 square meters, which is about 800 square feet on each floor. And the lower level has some encumbrances. So most of these variances are really just to recognize the existing conditions of the lot. The lot was created, as the report indicates, back in '86 with a right-of-way across the neighboring property. Parking is available on the site. There's a double car garage in the rear yard to provide for that. Next slide, please. So here's a list of all the variances and essentially what they're aiming to address. So parking coverage, side yards, lot area, and side yards to platform structures. Next slide. So duplex is permitted in R2 because there's no exterior changes to the building. We're maintaining the character of this building within the neighborhood. There's no variances required for parking. In fact, it's a preferred arrangement because parking is not visible from the street. As indicated, there's a lower headroom and limited natural lighting in the lower level. So where an ADU would otherwise be available as an option for a second unit here, the preference obviously is just to have one on the main floor and one on the upper floor. This application provides an appropriate amount of indoor and outdoor amenity space for residents, and there's already been a number of property upgrades and improvements. Last slide. Okay, happy to take any questions. Oh, sorry, second last slide. Yeah, don't need that slide.
Okay, so this is the existing building envelope remains as people would have come to know it over the years. It's just that this proposed duplex use, which doesn't change the building envelope, has zoning requirements that the existing building does not comply with. So these minor variances are really are there to recognize the double occupancy, not the change to the building envelope.
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions from the committee to the applicant? Okay. A motion, please, Carrie.
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance number A2821 be approved, as the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Okay, the motion has been passed unanimously.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank the 3 residents who submitted written comments. They're always part of our package and part of our consideration. So we're moving on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is 1520 5th Street, Louth. The country here, we might be talking about a barn. Is this the one? Yes, it is. So this is a minor variance application. Oh, where am I? Yes, to recognize this rurally located property's request for an accessory building which exceeds the maximum height and exceeds the maximum footprint minorly. And we know that the city's report suggests approval of the application. So if the applicant is compelled to provide us with any more information, this is the time to do it. Otherwise, we have a full understanding of what you want.
Thank you. Yes, I think everything is there. And I just wanted to recognize that I think in regards to the concerns that to the septic, that we are aware of that as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Yes, Carrie. Motion.
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance number A2921 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved, as the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
All those in favor of that motion? Congratulations, your application has been unanimously approved.
Thank you. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks.
Item number 7 on our agenda is concerning 340A Lake Street Road. It's a minor variance application. We have a staff report recommending approval, and this is for a proposed 3-silo with truck scale and dust collector along as part of adjacent to the former Port Weller dry dock area. So it's in that sort of industrial context. Is there anything that the applicant wishes to add to this application?
Thank you, Greg. We're just excited to be working with you guys. We're so thankful for the support that you have, that the city has been to us, and we're also in agreement with the recommendations as they have been laid out. Thank you very much.
I'm sure that the city and the committee doesn't hear that enough, so we appreciate you acknowledging that, but I'm sure you're so confident this is going to be a slam dunk that you feel you can get away with it. So we'll see what happens right now when we ask the committee members if they have any questions or if they want to make a motion. David, motion?
I'll make a motion. Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance application A3021 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved. The variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
All those in favor of the motion? Congratulations, your application has been approved unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, second from last, I think. Item 8 on our agenda, 83 Louth Street, minor variance application. There's 4 minor variance applications to recognize a proposed private road development consisting of 6 townhouses. The city's report they provide us to review recommends approval. We have 5 or so registered speakers, some of whom may have stayed on this exciting episode of the minor variance committee of adjustment. But first we will ask the owner or the applicant if they have anything they wish to add to what we know.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of committee. My name is Susan Smythe. I am the senior planner with Quartec Group. I'm the acting agent on behalf of Mr. Mark Marabella, who is the owner and applicant who is requesting the relief of these provisions. I have read the city's planning staff report, and we do agree with the recommendations. I have also read through the public comments, and I have prepared a presentation, and I want to just take some time to provide some additional project details and justification on the requested variances being considered for you this evening. Next slide, please. This slide here is just giving some context of the subject lands. So the site is located on the west side of Lowe Street, south of Reichert, north of Pelham Road and McTurnbull Drive intersection. Just to make mention, the site is south of the city's boundary for the GO Transit Station secondary plan. So this area will likely see some new changes in terms of land use, particularly for residential intensification, so we can promote some more transit supportive development. The site is approximately 0.21 hectares, or just slightly over 1/2 an acre in size, with a lot frontage of about 94 feet and lot depth of 231 feet. The 6 townhouse complex is providing a 28.5 unit per hectare, which is within the city's policies. That the townhouse complex is within the designation for low density, in which it's meeting within that density threshold. The density designation was developed with the city's planning department and was also approved by city council. And this townhouse complex is a permitted use on a private road. And the policies allow for a maximum of 32 units per hectare. From the policy perspective, the policy does conform to provincial and regional for residential infill, primarily because it's within the settlement area, and also that it can utilize existing municipal services, that within along Louth Street. In terms of the policy specifically for infill development, it encourages proposals to maximize underutilized land that is compatible with the surrounding area and assists the city with providing a mix of housing units and types. In terms of compatibility, the proposal was weighted against the criteria for built form and urban design, and the townhouses were designed to ensure the placement, number, type, and proportion of doors, windows, and other features, including garages and patios, were cognizant of the neighboring properties. Townhouses are not uncommon to the neighborhood. For instance, 68 Louth Street, the People's Choice Townhouse development, is located on the other side of Louth, just south of the site. It is on a longer private road, however, and it leads into the townhouse development. In this circumstance, this development has 2 blocks of 3 units, and the position and design of the buildings resemble a common housing style with a blend of the new and old builds in this neighborhood. If you don't mind going to the next slide, please. In terms of the proposed development requested variances, I have captured the different policies and zoning regs from the zoning bylaw. Again, the 6 townhouse units on a private road is permitted in the city's official plan and zoning bylaw. With specific to site design requirements, for instance, fitting the private road, which is 6 meters, fitting the garages to accommodate 1 car in the garage as well in the driveway, to accommodate site grading, as well as the placement of the first block of the units to align with 85 Low Street, which is the property to the north. The following requested variances are being asked to effectively utilize the sites to its fullest potential as an infill residential development. On those charts, the red highlighted areas show the zoning provisions that are requesting the variances. The requested reduction of the landscape buffer along the south side of the site is considered minor in nature because it is less than 1 foot from the zoning requirement. It can provide the adequate space to accommodate a retaining wall for drainage, as well as landscape features such as trees and decorative shrubs that will allow for a natural screening to the neighbors to the south. Later on in the presentation, I provided a slide that will show the different types of landscape that will be provided on the site. The combined reductions with the landscape buffer and the interior side yard setback from the rear wall, are necessary to fit the private road. So again, it's 6 meters to accommodate emergency vehicles. It's also to maintain a driveway width of 6 meters, and consequently, this reduction does not compromise the parking requirement for this development. That is being achieved here. The requested reduction in the minimum distance from the private road to the dwelling applies only to block 1. This is primarily the interior end unit of that block. The relief is minor because it's internal to this site and will not impact the maneuverability of vehicles, and there's enough space to provide adequate landscaping for that unit. This reduction is a direct result for aligning the front wall of the first unit of that block with the setback of the house located at 85 Low Street to the north. And that necessitated the entire block to shift westerly. The next slide, if you don't mind, I've identified the site plan and I've highlighted in those different blocks the 4 reductions for the requested variances. So again, to the bottom corner, the reduced minimum interior side yard from the end wall, the box moving internally to the site, it's the distance from that private road to that dwelling, so on unit 3. To the top north right corner, the reduced minimum interior side yard from that rear wall, and again, to the bottom corner, reduced landscape strip. If you could please move to the next slide. These next slides provide the perspective elevations of the units and what could be viewed from the neighboring properties. So this here is for block 1, the north view. So the view from the neighbor's yard to the north, 85 Low Street. Next slide, please. This is the block 1, so the east view. So this is the unit 1 front face on Low Street. As you can see here, it's consistent with what's already there in terms of a 2-story type of a unit dwelling. Next, please. This is again still block 1, the south view. So essentially, this is the row of the townhouses on the view from the private road. Next. This is the west view, so unit 3. So essentially, this is the view from the private road. So those residents on block 2, this would be their view looking into that last unit. Next, please. Actually, this view is the north view of block 2. So this would be the view from the rear yard of Low Street. So that is the last unit on block 2. Next. This is again the east view. So this is a view directly looking into the site from Low Street. Next, please. This is the south view. So this would be the view from the neighbor's rear yard to the south. So this is 81. So this is essentially the unit 6 in block 2. Next, please. So this is the 3 units in block 2. This is essentially the neighbor's view from those on Valley Road looking west. Next, please. This slide essentially provides the proposed landscape improvements to the site. The development is recognized that there will be some requirement to remove some of the trees. However, they will be replaced with a mixture of deciduous and coniferous trees that are native to the area. In terms of the fence, that fence would be replaced with a new board-on-board fence. I just would like to point out that I have read the comments from the concerned neighbors, particularly as it relates to drainage impacts. And this development is subject to site plan approval. That requires the review and approval by the city and region's engineering departments to ensure that there are no drainage issues onto adjacent properties as a result of this development. The design has accommodated culverts on both sides, the north and south, and will not block and maintain the flow from the watercourse that traverse the site. The culverts have been designed to direct the flows to the Low Street storm sewer. By contrast, there are some neighboring properties that have impacted the natural drainage of this watercourse, and the flooding and drainage issues are a direct result by manipulation of the grades and even in some cases building structures like pools and sheds directly over these swales. In terms of comments for compatibility, the townhouses are too intense and intrusive to the neighboring properties and private spaces. I would like to note that the proposal was reviewed with the city planning staff, and with their assistance and guidance, the townhouses have been positioned to offset and not to align with that of the neighbors to maintain their privacy. Additionally, with the new fence and landscape buffer strip, it will increase the screening and improve the current situation. Again, to reiterate, this private road development with townhouse units are permitted in both the official plan and zoning bylaw. And we are here to ask for relief to facilitate a development that is consistent with the residential infill and intensification policies. I thank you for your time and I welcome any comments from the committee and the public at this time.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask the planner associated with this project, as part of the SPA, a landscaping plan is to be submitted and approved by the city. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so to any of the concerns of the upcoming speakers, just to give some credibility, I guess, to what the presenter has shown by way of landscaping, the city will eventually have a chance to approve a landscaping plan and confirm that these items are placed appropriately for screening and part of the project. Does any member of the committee have a question, David?
Can we also assume that the proposed fence will be 6 feet high?
What is the height limit for a fence?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it will be consistent with what the zoning permits. I believe it's 6 feet. Charlotte, can you correct me if I'm wrong or right?
Through the chair, yes. The height for a fence along the rear and in the side yards would be 1.8 meters, which is approximately 6 feet.
Okay, so that would all be part of the landscaping plan that has to be approved by the city. So at this point, I'd just like to reiterate that I see that some of the registered speakers are also those who submitted written correspondence. So we have had the written correspondence as part of our package and it's been reviewed. So again, we would like you to provide new information that would enhance what you've already provided, if you have already provided written information. So Gary Eckhart, are you ready to speak with us? Elaine.
I just wanted to let you know that Mr. Eckhart and Callum Shedden, I believe, are speaking together.
Well, let's have the Eckhart Shedden duo speak to us now in stereo, but not at the same time. Okay, there we are, I think.
There we are, okay.
Okay, okay, good. So, figure out how you're going to do this together.
Right, see Callum goes first.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I want Mr. Cullum to speak first. We're not in the same room.
Okay.
Mr.
Chair and members of the committee. My name's Callum Sheldon. I'm a lawyer with Tandem Partners.
Callum, Sheldon, your audio is just about indistinguishable. So if anything you can do to improve that, is essential.
Is that better?
Not really, no. Oh, I just heard myself.
Yeah, we tested it yesterday. Is there any improvement there?
No. I mean, obviously I could hear you ask the question, so I could hear it, but there's no improvement.
The other option, Callum, is if you want to call in and speak on the phone.
That would probably be better. My comments will be brief, but I would appreciate it if you could hear them.
Actually, while you were talking there was some improvement. Are you close to the mic? You know where your microphone is? Are you as close as you can be to it?
I'm close to the mic. That's why I'm surprised. I've done hearings on this computer and it's never been a problem.
Okay, well, I think we prefer the phone-in option if you could make the effort, please. Elaine, will Callum have the phone number?
I'll send that to him.
Does the Eckhart side of this conversation want to entertain us with your comments while we're waiting, or would you prefer to wait for Callum?
I can go ahead. That's fine.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to thank the committee for letting me speak. The Eckhart family has resided at 80 Willow Street since 1954. We are opposed to all variances listed in this application. The development would have a great impact on our enjoyment of our property. A large portion of our homes, of the homes in our neighborhood, consist of one-story houses. And to stick an enormous two-story building in the middle of our backyard does not fit the neighborhood at all. The structure would tower over any house in our area. The raising of the ground to level it off would make it even more higher. The focal point of these two buildings is centered to my backyard. My wife and I have spent time and money making our backyard our oasis. We have a family barbecues on our deck, social drinks with friends and neighbors. Our children use the pool to play and suntan. Our privacy would be taken away. Our right to relax and unwind. At the end of the day, out on our deck would be gone. The proposed roadway going down the side of my house will cause excessive noise and light into my bedroom, living room, and will be against they will both all be against that roadway. As I have said, our house is 67 years old. It has a block foundation. The building of this road and sewers will have an impact on the foundation of my house. The road will also pass by my pool and will have an impact on the walls and surrounding areas of my pool. St. Francis Creek runs through our property. It was protected not too long ago. The flow of water that comes down from Valley Road, not just from south to north, but coming down from Valley Road, runs down the property in order to get to the creek. I'm lucky now to be able to cut the grass or turn my garden over by June. Putting a building in its path will divert more water onto my property, taking the drying time of my lawn, my garden, even preventing more of my enjoyment of the rest of my property in the back half. the 60-year-old willow trees, by the way, which were not shown in that picture. I'm funny, that's what they weren't shown. 5 of them do a tremendous job sucking up the water by removing them. Will also increase the water left behind in my yard. There's no room for a proposed development plan to have trees of this size in the new development plan. This is a very poorly designed plan and in no way fits our neighborhood. These are not minor variances, but major variances when taking into consideration the impact of this build that will have on the community. I hope this committee sees that great impact this will have on the neighbors living here and vote this proposal down. In saying that, if for some reason it is not, I would like to request a large wooden fence on my side of the yard, as well as a retaining wall to protect some of my family's privacy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The passion and concern you have is evident in your discussion. We appreciate you taking the time. Does any member of the committee have any specific questions of the resident adjacent to this proposed development? No. At this time, is Mr. Shedden ready to clearly address us?
He has called, he just has to unmute your phone.
Doing my best.
Oh, okay, there you are.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
It's happening to the best of us.
I did submit written comments. I only want to highlight a few of those comments for you with respect to the official plan. The official plan contains very specific policies as relate to urban design and redevelopment. I've set those out in my correspondence. 4.2 urban design principles speak to compatibility of new development and redevelopment with established areas. The compatibility is in section 4.3 under built form. There's a good statement there where it says compatibility of development does not necessarily mean the same or similar existing buildings in the vicinity, but rather that new development respects and enhances the existing character and context of an area. With respect, putting 6 townhouse units in a predominantly single residential area cannot possibly be seen to enhance the character of the area. There's also specific criteria in 4.3 that speaks to massing, and again, looks to compatibility with the surrounding area. So these are very specific policies, and when you're asked to determine as a committee if the application is in general conformity with the official plan, you really need to ask yourself the questions based on these policies. Is this development compatible? 7.1, the official plan, again, very specific requirements. It says development and redevelopment within the urban area shall be evaluated having regard for the following. And that's an imperative. It's not a may, it's a shall. And the building site will be looked at in terms of integration of compatible building forms, scale, massing, height. It'll be looked at with respect to privacy and the impact on the neighborhood in terms of noise, and whether the lot size is adequate and appropriate my submission to you, it doesn't meet any of those. So the onus is on the applicant to demonstrate compatibility and conformity with the official plan. The reports that you have before you just simply don't do that. So my submission, as the applicant hasn't met the onus under the Planning Act with respect to general intent of the official plan, this committee should be refusing all of these variances. And again, I apologize for the sound, and I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you so much. We managed to make it all happen. Is any member of the committee have any particular question of this presenter? Just for clarification to the planner, city planner, the opportunity for any resident having lived in this street for however long a period of time to increase the size of their house by adding a second floor, is that existed? So does that opportunity exist for everybody in this zone to, you know, as their family needs might require to increase their home to actually build up as well?
The height, the maximum height does apply across these properties. Yeah, all of these properties.
Okay, but when this, obviously when this area was developed at the time, the builders built single-story homes, and the question is, does that mean that from now until forever that there can only be single-story homes? But the zoning bylaw actually recognizes the fact that every residence has an opportunity to add to the height of their home. This development just happens to be taking advantage of that opportunity that exists in the zoning bylaw. Thank you. So at this point, so thank you both presenters. We still have Randy and Norma Lazoy to speak. I can see you.
Yes,
Hello.
thank you, Greg. Thank you, committee. Just in regards to that last statement made by you, Greg, yes, I understand what you're saying there as far as we all have the opportunity to put a second story on our homes, but we are also still one house on a particular size lot. And obviously, if I happen to put a second story on my home, I'm certainly not going to be that intrusive to my neighbor if I did that, since I'm so many meters away. However, when you look at this development, yes, they are taking the opportunity to have a two-story development there, 2 different blocks, 2 stories high. However, if you take a look at the amount of space and square footage or square meters that those buildings occupy, they go far beyond what the neighborhood would look like, even if we did all put on another story on top of our home. So in response to that, I just like to make that very clear that we're not talking about oranges and oranges. We are talking about, how shall I say? Oranges and lemons, shall I say.
Right.
All right. So as far as that goes, and another thing too is that even if we did do that, this neighborhood consists of approximately 7 units per hectare. We're looking at something here on this development more to 28. I understand what the city of St. Catharines is doing. You know, not too long ago, committee, the city of St. Catharines was encouraging everybody to greenscape, plant trees, plant bushes, and increase the beauty of your property. But now, it seems now that the impetus of the city of St. Catharines and everybody is to now pave over everything that we've done in recent years. And unfortunately, once we start doing that, people are getting closer and closer, and then we have more noise as we will have from the development, more increased garbage, just more busyness throughout the neighborhood. I think if we take a look at our neighborhood, which basically, and I only want to focus in on just our neighborhood, not across the road, I would just want to talk about how this immediately affects the neighborhood, which is surrounded by Valley Road, Love Street. And if you take a look at the back as Gary had already mentioned, there's St. Francis Creek. We all know what has happened over the years when developments have been built over creeks. Is the city of St. Catharines, the planning department, and the developer, what is their guarantee that nothing is going to happen in years down the road as far as water in Francis Creek affecting our property? And if it does so, are they going to rectify it? So that's my biggest concern.
Okay, well, let's try and find some information about that. So to the city planning, when it comes to surface water runoff and the fact that any new development has to respect the pre-development stormwater management with the post-development, is there any recognition? I mean, obviously, if there is current problem, would you say that through the site plan agreement and the stormwater management plans that are submitted, that every measure is taken to ensure that this development does not contribute to any pre-existing problem?
Yes, we do look at the drainage and grading of the property through the site plan. This particular case with the residents are referring to as Francis Creek is not considered a regulated watercourse by the Conservation Authority and was rerouted a number of years ago. That the actual creek was rerouted south of this site. And since that time, an additional catch basin down on Valley Road has been added to catch even more of the water. So it's unlikely that flows to this creek are going to continue to increase. It's not really a creek as it once was, but we do recognize that there are certain flows in what was the creek bed. And the engineers, our development engineers, do consider that when they're reviewing the drainage plan on site, and the site plan will only be approved when the engineering has been met with the approval of the city, and that involves making sure that any of the flows on and off the property are the same as the pre-development flows. So they'll have to manage that on site.
So this is this is reviewed by the developers' engineers and then reviewed by the city's engineers. So it's cross-reviewed and then not approved until it meets the requirements of the city's engineers, who are acting on behalf of its citizens. And so to the current speaker, the reason why I wanted to do that was to your concern obviously was surface runoff, and I wanted to highlight that this process addresses that through an engineered study and an engineered response, and it is not permissible for any new development to negatively impact its neighbors for all the reasons that you and the previous presenters have brought up. So, and hopefully we'll hear more and clarify more as we go through our list of speakers. But thank you for your contribution, Michael Newell. Yes, Elaine.
Michael is deferring to Mr. Eckhart and to Mr. Shedden, so he won't be speaking this evening.
Okay, well, we appreciate if the previous speakers have brought up the topics that you wanted to bring forward, and you're recognizing that that's been addressed. We appreciate you recognizing that and allowing us to be more efficient. Joe Crosby, you're the final presenter registered. Are you?
He is present.
Ready to? Okay, I see him. Fix that fancy hair, unmute your microphone, and please contribute to the conversation.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So I'd like to state, unlike what other people said, I would not like to thank the committee. I would not like to thank the members of the City Hall that are here. Many of you disregarded many of the statements.
The committee has not done anything to offend you, so you don't have to not thank us now.
Oh, I'm not thanking
you. They've already had their report.
I'm not thanking you. I'm not thanking you.
Great.
If Joe McCaffrey was alive, he'd kick your ass, all of you. So let me tell you something. Let me speak to the parking issue and the units per hectare. Right now, there are 6 units
Please do.
being built. Can you guarantee us that the end units of those townhouses won't have accessory units?
I'll ask the question to the city planner. Does this zoning permit interior accessory dwelling units within the single family detached, or no, the semi-detached townhouse?
The accessory dwelling unit is only permitted in detached, semi-detached, and townhouses that are street facing, that are on their own lots. Private road developments specifically do not include a permission for accessory units, which would mean there could not be a building permit issued in which there is an interior unit unless they came through this committee to ask for that permission, in which case you would hear about it, or if a zoning amendment was sought, which is not the case. So as it's proposed, no, there are no accessory units in this development.
And also, if an accessory unit was permitted, which we know it's not, there would be a parking requirement as well, which this current plan does not accommodate. Is that true?
There would be. I haven't assessed this plan with that in mind, so I'm not sure if this would meet it or not, but it would have its own parking requirement, yes.
Well, I really appreciate you contributing to the conversation,
Thank
Joe.
you, Greg.
So that's the answer to your first question.
Thank to all of you for not really, submitting any opinions or any questions or any answers to any of the questions. I think you're all failures. Thank you very much.
All right. So thank you. Elaine, we can mute Joe just in case he's inspired to provide us any more insight.
Yeah.
Too bad that you're not appreciated, or we're not appreciated. But I think that we did our job so far. But our job isn't over yet, because our job is to now ask the applicant if, giving anything that they've heard from the speakers, they have anything they wish to add.
No, I don't have anything to add at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is probably your last time to add anything, but to the members of the committee, do we have any questions of either city staff or the applicant's agent? Yes, David Ringler.
Just for some clarification, the one gentleman was asking about the fence, and I just want to re-clarify that there will be, I think you said 1.8 meter, almost 6 feet fence going along the property line between 81 and 83, correct?
Mr. Chair, that is correct. And in addition to the fence, there will also be landscape stripped along that side as well. So there'll be 2 opportunities for buffering to the south and the north of the site.
Understood. And secondly, is your presentation still reasonably handy?
Elaine, the digital presentation?
I'm wondering if we could look at the front side of block 1, that view.
So the front elevation of block 1?
Clarify with that landscape buffer, it's Mike Newell, sorry. That's one of the variances that they're requesting to minimize that buffer, right?
Yes, thank you. I don't know where that came from. Okay.
Mr. Eckert.
So, could you, David, which elevation do you want to see?
View.
That one?
That one. So relative to what can be built on this lot through the planner, we're clearly under the height because nobody's asking for a variance on height. The overlook issue, can you talk to me about that a little bit?
And sorry, is that a question for me through the chair?
The second story?
In this case, the elevation that you're looking at is along the private road, which is 6 meters wide. It's the private road that is 2.8 meter buffered from the neighbor. And then there's a section of land that is landscaping and porch in front of those units.
Correct.
So there is approximately 10, just under 10.5 meters between those buildings and the neighboring lot line. So the overlook isn't a concern of staff in that case. You could build a building on this property that could come up to 2 meters of the property line, based on a 2-story building, if you were doing a single or if you were doing, another building form. So this is quite far from the property line in terms of overlook.
From the point of view of the comment about privacy, relatively speaking, this provides considerable privacy to 81 Louth Street relative to what could be built.
In terms of the distance, yeah, you could build much closer than that one in another form, for example.
Correct. Like if one wanted to build a 2-story house, it could be 4 meters from the lot line.
I believe
2 meters.
Yes.
Or 1.2 meters.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? If not, I'll be happy to have someone volunteer to make a motion regarding this application. David Ringler.
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance application A3121 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved. And I can't recall if there's conditions. I don't believe there were. As the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, so we have 3 for the application and 1 against. So the application has been approved, although not unanimously. Okay,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee.
thank you. Okay, so we are now have arrived at our final application for the evening, which is 92A and B, and 92, a series of severances and associated minor variances. The city has recommended approval with consideration for some conditions that they have outlined, 12 of them to be exact, for the severance, 1 severance, 3 conditions related to the other severance. All this, it's lots of conditions for the severances, and some approvals and a denial because it's not applicable for one of the minor variances. Would the applicant like to provide any more additional information?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a presentation. I think Elaine will call up. In the interim, I just wanted to advise the committee that we have reviewed the staff report and the conditions that are in agreement with the recommendations laid out therein. So if you don't mind, Elaine, you can take us to the next slide. So, within the context of West St. Catharines, the site is located on Louth Street, and you can see by the lotting fabric, this application is not unlike others that have gone before it. So there's many of these large lots in this neighborhood that have undergone severances. In fact, this lot being 985 square meters actually doesn't even meet the official plan regulations for density, that being between 20 and 30 units per hectare, which on a lot of this size is either 2 at the very low end or 3 at the upper end. So that's sort of the planning context and the neighborhood context in which we're working here. Next slide, please. As you can see, we're in a R1 zoning that permits all forms of housing that are listed there, detached, semi-detached townhouses. We're only proposing a detached home here. Next slide, please. This is an initial shot taken a year ago of the home. And there have been some improvements to that existing dwelling. Next slide, please. And the proposal actually proposes to keep this existing dwelling because it's a significant part of the character of the neighborhood. You can see there have been some improvements to the outside, which I think are adding to the streetscape. And so there's been great effort in making sure that is preserved and enhanced for the rest of the neighborhood. Next slide. So the applications before the committee today are, well, that didn't work out well. Okay, I don't know what happened to that slide, but you can see the intent here was to show you the map with the remnant and subject parcels together with the widening or the easements for the adjacent properties. The proposal is looking to have a shared driveway with rights of way over each part in favor of the opposing neighbor. So perhaps we can just skip to the next part, but the part 5 would have been the, oh dear, all of these have gone screwy. Do we have a site plan, Lane? Perhaps that might be
I'll switch over.
easier. Yeah, don't mind.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop and just. Here we go.
Thank you. So in any case, there are some associated variances with this application. Lot area, no, sorry, not lot area. Lot frontage is reduced for the subject parcels as well as the remnant parcel, but once again, it's relatively consistent with the previous land severances in the neighborhood. We're looking for a variance for the existing building, which is only 55 square meters, and that's about 595 square feet, and proposing an accessory dwelling unit in that, which would be 41 square meters or 440 square feet. So as per the zoning provisions, we require an increase in the maximum allowable area from 40 to 44%. And then I think largely in part of the road widening, there's an additional variance required for pavement coverage to permit the asphalt coverage that we're proposing for the shared drive and parking areas in the rear. If you can you perchance go back to the other
Sure.
presentation for me? Thank you. So if you just skip down the next, and sorry, just to, yeah. And then just as noted earlier, that one variance for front yard setback is no longer required as deemed by city staff. So if you could skip down a couple of slides there to the show, this is the, nope, yep, nope, elevation.
The elevation drawing, Elaine.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the proposed design for the new home on the lot. You can see that it isn't garage control oriented. There's no garage sticking in the front or no driveway in the front. This is done deliberately to enhance the streetscape as well as preserve the existing tree out front. And the proposed driveway access to the left of that tree in that earlier photograph, again, would be a shared driveway, which would permit the cars to be hidden from the street view and facilitated in the rear yard. Just in comment to some of the other concerns neighbors have had about backing onto the street, this wouldn't be an issue here, given the fact that those folks would have an opportunity to turn around and drive forward onto the street in this case. So it's really a much safer and much better design from an urban perspective. Can you just skip to the next slide, please? Thanks. So right next door, directly to the south, on 88 and 90 Louth, you can see a previous severance that occurred, and new homes that were created there, each with single car garages, or maybe a garage and a half on the one on the left, or the right, sorry. But what's happened here is because they're forward facing garage controlled, you can see a bit of an abuse of parking happening in the street, which really detracts from the streetscape. So this application is looking to avoid that situation and actually enhance the streetscape as a result of that. Next slide, please. So the use is permitted in the R1. We're even with 2 units on this size of lot, we're at the low end of the density. We could support up to 3. Parking again is provided in the rear, so we've got a safer operation or driving environment. We've got a single driveway where there would otherwise be two. The existing house is saved, and the tree in the front yard is saved as well. Accessory dwelling unit will provide additional affordable housing options to the neighborhood, and we've greatly improved the streetscape. So I don't think there's anything beyond here that's of much value to the committee in terms of their consideration. So happy to open it up for questions.
I just wanted to clarify what I thought you said off the top was that you were in full agreement with all the recommendations made by the city on the severances and the minor variance?
Yes.
Dan? Excellent. So that was a little bit of a surprise. I'm quite happy to hear that. Any questions of the members of the committee to the applicant? If none, knowing that they're not challenging. Oh yes. Oh, Elaine, please put your hand down. I haven't finished talking yet. We should make note of the fact that there was a revised sketch submitted after the circulation that only included the line of the front yard. What do you call it? The road widening, although it's not really road widening, but anyway. And we should, someone should consider making a motion as to whether or not we think that this needs to be recirculated, or was it just a clarification and minor nature?
Was it not an easement? It was an easement, not a road widening.
Circulation application. Right. The revised size and boundary of the easement. Sorry, I just should have read a little further. Is there any discussion about whether or not that was a significant enough change that would warrant recirculation? Terry?
I move that we do not have to recirculate.
Any discussion with that, or all those in favor of not having to recirculate? Okay, so we are not recirculating it. So to those who are watching, it was just a minor change to the drawing that has no effect to the impact of the building on the site. And then, so there's also requests to add a following condition to consents B 0621 SC and B 0721 SC. So when whoever's reading in the motion, please refer to what that is. And at this point, who would like to make a motion? Oh, it's too late in the evening for people just to get shy all of a sudden. Maybe my mic's not working. Who would like to make a motion, please? Oh, okay, it is working. Adam.
Sorry, I was going to make the motion, but then you added that last bit and I got very confused and had to
The last bit is that
now I can't hear. Now you froze.
He's just saying, Adam, that you just add that in as an additional condition other than the ones that are written in the report.
Okay. Oh, there it is. I see. No, I can't do it. I lost it. I don't have the phrasing. I'm sorry.
So it looks like Greg's frozen.
Can I sit in his chair?
I believe so. Yes.
This is one of his finest performances.
I don't know if he's able to get back on or we'll just give him a minute to see if he can jump back in.
Why don't you read in the motion anyways, Dave?
Well, no, we should wait till he's there. Otherwise, if he doesn't show up in 2 minutes, then not 2 minutes, 1 minute.
Well, he can assign the motion.
If he's not here, though, he can't vote on it. So that's why I wanted to give him a sense. Give him a chance. Otherwise, it'll just be the three of you.
Okay, I found that the addition is that they're providing the secretary treasurer with the acknowledgement and direction of the subject part. Okay.
Okay, so as he's not on, Dave, are you going to act as the vice chair?
Adam, you make the motion.
Okay, I will make the motion. Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that consent applications be this is B06. Yeah, there they are. B06 21SC, B07 21SC, and minor variances A32 21 and A33 21 be approved. Subject to any conditions outlined in the technical report, as the consents are desirable, compatible with the surrounding area. They have no adverse impacts on the surrounding properties. They have regard for section 5124 of the Planning Act, conform with the policies of the city's official plan and zoning bylaw, maintain the intent and purpose of the provincial policy statement, and do not conflict with applicable provincial plans. The variances are minor in nature, are appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, with the addition of the condition for B06 21SC and B07 21SC that the owner provide the secretary treasurer with the acknowledgement and direction for conveyance of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan for use in the issue of a certificate of consent, and that variance 2 of application A3221 be denied as it is not applicable. Get it?
Yes, Elaine?
Sorry, I had Greg calling. He's going to call in back to the hearing. But Adam, I just want to confirm that both consents were approved with the revised sketch.
With the revised sketch, yes.
Okay. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Can we vote, Elaine? All those in favor?
Lane, I vote for it, sorry.
Okay, so that's approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to, are we on to other business now?
Yeah, we move on to new business.
I would like to congratulate the staff, including Will and Elaine and the planners, because it no doubt must have been a very stressful month, given there were a couple of files that were, there was some heavy lifting involved, I'm sure. There seems to be a lot more input in terms of Zoom attendance and so on. And I can't imagine how much you had to do in order to pull this off this month. So cheers.
Cheers. I'll cheers to that. Much appreciated. I'm back if anyone cares.
And the chair did a great job too.
Yeah.
Dave, way to go, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carrie. And I meant to, Greg is on the phone as well, so he's just so he can hear you.
Right on.
So at this point, did David do a good job of making the motion and we voted, or what happened there?
Adam made the motion and it was approved unanimously.
Yeah, Dave took the chair. We tried to wait for you to come back on, but so Dave took the chair and made the vote based on that application.
Okay.
The internet bill should be paid monthly, I think, shouldn't it?
I don't know. I steal it from my neighbor.
Oh, you better talk to them.
So I abstained from that one, I guess. Is that what happened officially?
I guess so, yes.
Okay, that's fine by me. I could give you my vote if you wanted to, but if it's fine the way it is, we'll leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
So we made it to the end of our agenda of applications at least. So we don't need to belabor this point anymore. We can talk about new business.
Do we need to talk to the powers that be about getting a virtual sergeant at arms?
No, we do. We have that. It's called the mute button,
Yeah.
and eventually Elaine found it.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
No.
I think this one wasn't in person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our next meeting is May 26th.
How many
Excellent.
files?
That was my next question.
How many files?
A number of them. I really don't know offhand, but
Okay.
I can't really remember.
Thank you.
For the next meeting, may we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
I can't see you, but Adam, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Until.
Bye-bye.